Oh my bad. Salam Aleikum. Welcome back to another video. We back. We back. Had to take a little break. Was just finishing my papers and all that. I'm glad I'm done, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It's been a long time. I've been in school since like maybe 20. Well, not technically in school the entire time, but I've been in university, whatever, since 2019. So 2026, big 2026. So I'm glad I'm done. I'm actually very happy, but I'm not done yet technically. They still have to explain to me like what next or whatever. I'm chilling. I'm chilling. I'm vibrating. I'm vibrating. I'm vibrating. I'm vibrating. It's funny because the topic, the thought like what I'm gonna talk about is my mood is so contradictory. Well, no, it's not actually. It affirms what I'm saying actually. Yeah. So basically, I'm gonna title the video something along the lines of why I'm glad to be born in the worst era. And I'll have the prefix because I always got to do this. When I say the worst era, look, I swear there are worse time periods to live in terms of health, in terms of safety, in terms of all these sorts of things. So I am not up here saying that this is the worst era by this metric or that metric. I'm saying in totality, I think this is the worst era because there's things that people deal with now that many previous generations couldn't even fathom. The fact that you could be on your phone for, hours on end, that's a pretty big point to explain there's something wrong with this time period. There's something really wrong with this era. Every single second of your day is simply siphoned away in order for corporations and companies to make a buck off of you. That's a pretty bad thing. Now, all of a sudden, do I say, we're better than, the Black Plague era or something like that? Uh, I don't. I'm not saying that. I would rather live in. Look, I'm glad to be born in this era for the problems that it has because it will only bring out more good in those who want to be good. That's my point. The fact that this era has so many issues with it is a good thing. I'm actually glad to live in a bad time because there's something very interesting about living in good times. What does that even mean? What is a good time? There's no such thing, really, if you think about it, right? There was an experiment I saw yesterday. It's like mice, right? And it was like it gave mice the perfect living conditions. It gave them ample food, same temperature, everything, and they somehow eventually died off because there's something wrong with living in perfection. There you can't live in perfect and human beings we're trying to. I think that that's also not a good idea because it never ends up working out. But why I'm glad to live in this era, with AI, the problems that it poses to the environment, to society, to culture itself, I'm glad to live in this era because the problems that we're going to have to face, we have never seen before. So, guess what? That means that we have to grow. That's the whole point. That's why I'm saying this. It's because if we lived in an era where it was so comfortable, there was no problems, there would be a problem that would stem. I guarantee you. It's not possible to live in total unity and comfort and relaxed state. It's not possible. Someone, somewhere, or a groupings of people will want to create some sort of an issue in order to create more how do I describe it? It's like a game. If you play a game for too long and it gets too repetitive, you just throw something in there to just randomize it. That's life now. That's like what life people have kind of figured out. Like life is just this like game that you play, and random stuff starts, showing up at like random checkpoints, right? So I'm glad to be born in this era because a, I actually get to now learn what true suffering looks like. That's number one. Because now we have social media. So I have seen what has gone on in the Middle East. I have seen what goes on in Africa. I have seen what goes on in South America. I have seen what goes on in Asia, right? To women and children. I now know what true suffering looks like. So that's number one. I'm glad to know what true suffering looks like because the suffering that we in our generation come about and speak about and the complaints that we have, in honest total reflection are completely ridiculous when you look at what actually people go through. So that's number one, what I'm very glad to understand what true suffering looks like, because now I cannot and should not complain about my situation. I should never, in any way, shape, or form. And this is for the way I live. If you want to live differently, go ahead. For me personally, I will never complain about any situation I am ever in, because there's people on this planet who go through 10,000 times worse and they never ask for it. Okay? So don't come up here and tell me about how, there's problems that you go through. Shut up. Shut up. Get over yourself. Okay? There's people on this planet who go through 10,000 times worse than you. Don't come up here and tell me about how you have it hard. You don't have it hard. Maybe you don't have it hard enough. Maybe you haven't learned. I'm getting hot right now, man. I'm sorry. But number two, perspective. Because I understand what suffering is, it gives me a perspective of my privilege. Okay? So this can be one and two. Okay? The perspective I have is I am a privileged person. Look, I live in a suburban neighborhood, okay? I have no problems. I have food, I have security, I have shelter, I have all this stuff that, in honest to God truth, you take for granted on a day-to-day basis. The fact that you have Wi-Fi. Imagine if you didn't have Wi-Fi for a day. Look at how quickly you would crash out. Just think about this stuff. Imagine you didn't have a stream of grocery stores where you could go at any point and purchase food for yourself. Think about that. I want you to really think about this stuff. Okay? So the fact that I have this perspective now of what true privilege looks like and what the privileged people think, you are privileged to even be awake. You are privileged to even be able to breathe right now. You are privileged to even have the limbs on your body still intact. Think about these things really, okay? What else? I'm doing this off the cuff, so I'm gonna try and think of a third one right quick. Um, yeah, the ability to understand how to help other people. Like, now we have seen what suffering looks like. Now we understand what our perspective of privilege and what our privilege really does feel like, and look like. Now we gotta help people. I really think that is what this era should be about. This era should just forget about this whole materialism and consumption and only looking out for oneself. This selfish kind of tendency that this system has created. We have to break out of it, not from from a forceful fashion for where you go and you just destroy the entire. No, what you do is, in your own communities, you start to come together and you start to question, why do we have such homelessness in our areas? Why do we have such a huge drug epidemic? Why do we have such low literacy rates for specific groupings and demographics? Why do we have such problems that are so prevalent in so many communities? Why are we simply comfortable with other people's suffering? That's what I'm really concerned for in this generation. We have become comforted by our own idea of, well, I can't do anything. And that is very dangerous, because that's not true. You literally can do anything at any time, whenever you want. It doesn't take that much either. The person who thinks that giving a homeless person a few dollars and then instantly will go to, well, they're just going to buy drugs. What have you done? For you to say that statement, what have you done? You have simply done nothing, and all you've done is complain about what I have done. Stop, okay? Stop. People have to get out of this whole, you don't know what they're going to do with it. You don't know either, okay? Don't bring up that garbage with me, okay? So this generation, I mean, y'all got to really lock in. We might be really cooked. Yeah, whatever. We might not get jobs, and you might not get $100,000 job. Was that the goal? What were you gonna do with all that money in the first place? Like, I want you to really think about this stuff. Were you gonna start opening orphanages? Were you just gonna start, buying supercars or whatever that type? We might be cooked in terms of the material life that we have come to think is a good life. Purchasing a home, all these sorts of things. Maybe these things are being delayed. Maybe when you're 20, in your early 20s, it's going to be delayed until you're 40, and that's the new way of living. This way of thinking you must start to alter, because what you once saw was a reality, what you once saw was comfort, what you once saw was attainable, is now going to be out of reach, maybe for another 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years. And you have to get comfortable with this idea, because you are not going to have these things as readily accessible as previous generations did. We're going to have it harder in many different aspects, and there's a reason, because maybe previous generations have completely squandered the privileges that they had, in order to just kind of throw it upon the next generation. And that's the whole cycle that we're now trying to break. I watched a video and it perfectly encapsulated this. If I find it, I'm gonna put it in the description. But it's like each generation either has the ability to make more solutions or make more problems for the generation that comes after. We're in that generation where the generation that came before us and the one that came before them, this kind of compounded problems and just dumped it onto the next one. Okay? And now we're in that perfect situation where the climate is in a pretty bad spot. Wars are always looming at every single day. Job scarcity is a real problem. AI is coming to take everyone's job. Whatever you want to bring up, all those doomer things, go ahead and do it. But guess what? Get comfortable with these ideas. Because that's what life is now. It's uncertainty. Life was always uncertain. But human beings, with this weird way, like we're so arrogant. We want everything to be this way. And the way we can't predict stuff. And I'm glad to live in this time period because now it puts everything into perspective where you aren't actually supposed to predict every single flow of every single second of your day. Okay? I'm getting hot, man. All right, I'm gonna end the video right here, but yeah, thank you so much for watching another video. More content will be coming out. So yeah, take it. Be on the lookout. Take care.